They linked the princess warrior's agony to a human balancer. He didn't even flinch. The atmosphere in the fusion chamber was sharp and clinical, alive with the tang of ionized air and gleaming alloys. Mason stood between two towering Zephyrian sentinels, their obsidian armor reflecting the harsh white lights, the faint whine of energy weapons held ready at their sides. His wrists were bound in bands of pulsing violet energy, the cuffs alive with a gentle hum that tingled through his bones. His eyes, steady and alert, swept the room, memorizing exits, counting shadows, noting the subtle hierarchy in the way the Zephyrians watched him. He'd endured months as a captive, and the Zephyrians' obsession with human endurance had never felt so charged, so ritualistic. At the heart of the chamber rose a dais, smooth as river stone, and upon it sat two elaborate seats. Each was threaded with veins of glowing crystal and metallic filigree that pulsed in time with the soft throb of the chamber's power core. Princess Lyra occupied the seat to the left, her posture regal and unmoving. Her skin shimmered, a luminous azure blue beneath the lights, and her long, dark purple hair was woven into tight braids, each strand inlaid with tiny metallic charms that caught the glow and scattered it in fleeting rainbows. Large almond-shaped eyes, silvery blue and cold as glacial water, regarded Mason with a detached curiosity. The intricate markings that curled across her neck and shoulders seemed almost alive, shifting with her pulse beneath ceremonial armor, which clung to her body in plates marked by luminous sigils that pulsed gently, echoing her own formidable power. A Zephyrian technician stepped forward, a being slight of frame, three eyes set in a triangular pattern across a delicate face, hands with fingers as long and fine as quills. The technician gestured toward the empty seat beside Lyra, voice precise and tinged with boredom. "The balancer will take position." Mason obeyed. He moved with the quiet dignity of a man who had learned to conserve his energy, every muscle taut with anticipation. As he sat, the technician's fingers danced over unseen controls. Metallic restraints closed around his limbs, and a cool band pressed against his forehead, holding him in place. The technician leaned close, speaking in a low, measured tone. "Princess Lyra's power is unmatched, but it brings with it a psychic backlash, pain that would destroy most. Your robust human mind has been chosen to absorb the excess. Consider it an honor." Mason met the technician's gaze without flinching. "I'll try not to disappoint," he said dryly, his voice hoarse from weeks of silence. The technician did not respond. Instead, he pressed a final sequence, and the restraints locked with a soft hiss. Across from him, Lyra's expression was impassive, but there was a faint flicker of interest in her eyes. She turned to address her attendants, her words clipped and authoritative. "Ready the array." Above them, the crown of crystal filaments descended, a web of slender, trembling threads that hovered just above their scalps, shimmering with barely contained energy. In that suspended moment, the chamber grew quiet. The Zephyrian observers, arrayed behind a shielded barrier, leaned forward. The air thrummed with anticipation, and Mason was aware of Lyra's gaze, cold, appraising, and almost vulnerable in its intensity. The moment felt strangely intimate, as if they were about to share a secret known only to gods. "Begin the fusion," Lyra commanded, her voice slicing through the silence. The technician's hands flickered, activating the device. Instantly, a shrill resonance filled the chamber, vibrating through steel and bone. The filaments brushed their skin, and Mason's world fractured. Searing agony tore through his mind, a torrent of psychic force, a maelstrom of rage, sorrow, and the scars of battles fought across lifetimes. His identity buckled under the pressure. The pain was not physical, but something deeper, a wound to the soul that threatened to unravel him. He tasted the bitterness of Lyra's fury, saw glimpses of alien battlefields, heard the screams of the dying, felt the echo of every decision that had condemned or saved a life. The Zephyrian observers watched, waiting for the inevitable breakdown. Even the sentinels shifted, ready to intervene when the human mind crumbled, as so many had before. But Mason did not break. Within the psychic storm, he found his anchor, not in resistance, but in memory. The chaos of a field hospital under fire, the stench of smoke and blood, the heavy weight of loss, and the fragile moments of hope. He saw the faces of comrades he'd held as they died, the hands he'd grasped in reassurance, the lives he'd pieced back together in the ruins. He did not fight the pain. He let it flow through him, observed it, accepted it. His pulse steadied, his breathing slow and even. His face remained composed, and when he opened his eyes, they locked with Lyra's. Through her own agony, Lyra watched him, first with disbelief, then with something perilously close to awe. He not only endured, he absorbed, and when the cycle ended, he remained whole. The chamber lights dimmed, the filaments retracted, and Mason slumped in his restraints, chest heaving, but eyes clear. The Zephyrians murmured among themselves, unsettled. Later, in the sterile quiet of his cell, Mason sat cross-legged on the narrow cot, hands resting on his knees. He replayed the experience, letting the echoes of pain and power settle. The connection had been invasive, almost violating, but it had also revealed something unexpected. A mind shaped by compassion and duty, wounded yet resilient. A faint echo of Lyra's power lingered within him, humming in the back of his mind. The cell door hissed open. Lyra entered, dismissing her guards with a curt wave. The door slid shut behind her, sealing them in privacy. She prowled the room, her movements tight and restless, like a caged predator. "How did you survive?" she demanded. Her voice was sharp with genuine curiosity, undercut by irritation. "The Fury has broken our best. It should have destroyed you." Mason opened his eyes, calm and unguarded. "I'm a field medic. My job is to manage trauma." She scoffed, her lips curling in disdain. "You're just a balancer, nothing more." To reassert her dominance, she reached for him with a psychic surge, a needle of pain, a demand for submission. She expected a scream, a flinch, something to confirm her superiority. Instead, she was struck by a memory not her own. Mason kneeling beside a dying comrade, hands bloodied but gentle, voice soft and steady as he offered peace to the fading man. The feedback stunned her, a rush of empathy, alien and disarming. She recoiled, severing the link with a snap. "Stay out of my mind, human." He shrugged, a small, defiant smile on his lips. "You're the one who keeps reaching out." Lyra's eyes narrowed, frustration and intrigue warring in her gaze. She had never met someone she couldn't break. For the first time, the balance of power felt uncertain, the boundaries between captor and captive blurred by something neither could yet name. The training hall was a vast cavern of obsidian and shifting holograms, the polished black floor reflecting the glimmering projections of alien landscapes and combat scenarios in constant motion. Twin rings of Zephyrian glyphs pulsed along the ceiling, their light flickering in time with the hum of the arena's shield generators. Lyra moved within this luminous crucible, a vision of lethal grace. Her twin energy blades carved arcs of violet fire through the simulated dusk, every motion as precise as a heartbeat. Mason stood high above the arena, his wrists free for once, but flanked by sentinels whose unreadable faces bore silent warnings. From this vantage, he watched Lyra's dance, a blur of metallic armor, braids flashing with embedded charms, markings on her skin glowing as her power surged and ebbed with every motion. She seemed less a person than an elemental force, her presence commanding the room's gravity. Beside Mason, Rin bristled. The Zephyrian lieutenant's silver-green armor was dull compared to Lyra's, but his eyes burned with conviction. He leaned in, voice low and sharp. "A primitive shouldn't witness Zephyrian rites. Your place is in the cages, not among warriors." Mason met Rin's glare, his own gaze steady. "I go where I'm ordered." The sentinels didn't react, their loyalty to Lyra absolute. Below, the whir of drones drew attention back to the arena. Lyra spun, her blades a blur as she danced through a swarm of autonomous combatants. The drones shifted forms, one moment humanoid, the next a tangle of bladed limbs and whirring shields. Lyra never faltered. She slipped between them, disarming and dismantling each with ruthless efficiency. Sparks and shattered fragments rained around her, dissolving into holographic dust as her blades passed through them. With a final flourish, she dispatched the last drone. The hum of energy faded. Lyra turned, eyes finding Mason above. Her voice rang through the chamber, clear and commanding. "He's not a spectator. He's a tool I intend to understand." Even from this distance, Mason felt her reach for him, a controlled psychic surge, bright and bracing as winter wind. Fury lashed out, hot and sharp. He steadied his breath, absorbing the jolt with practiced calm. His body tensed, but only slightly, as if bracing for the familiar weight of another's pain. But this time, Lyra felt something in return, a ghostly echo, like a thought reflected in a hall of mirrors. His mind brushed hers not just as a wall, but as a living thing, analyzing her stance, reading her balance, cataloging the tension in her muscles and the split-second timing of each parry. She sensed his training, his intuition, the habit of reading bodies under stress. For a heartbeat, she felt her own feet mirror his remembered postures, her grip adjust to a subtle angle he would have chosen. The intimacy of it caught her off guard, a secret shared without consent. Rin's impatience boiled over. With a snarl, he vaulted from the observation deck into the arena, energy blade igniting in a crackling arc. He landed before Lyra, chest heaving, stance defiant. "You dishonor the rites, princess," he spat. "Let your tool watch a true Zephyrian duel." Lyra's lips curled in a cold smile. "Careful, Rin, your challenge might teach us both something." Their blades met with a sound like splitting glass, the impact sending a ripple through the force field ringing the arena. Rin pressed hard, fury in every stroke, but Lyra matched him move for move, her eyes never leaving his. The duel became a tempest of motion, spins, feints, the clash and hiss of plasma against plasma. Each exchange fueled the psychic link between Lyra and Mason. As the pace quickened, so did the flow of sensation between them. Lyra deepened the connection. Pain welled up, her muscles burned, bruises bloomed beneath her armor, and the ache of each near miss sharpened her focus. She funneled it all into Mason, letting him bear the brunt. For a moment, it seemed a simple transaction. Her pain, his burden. But overlaid upon her instincts now was his tactical insight. Memories of training in hostile environments, the logic of triage, the swift calculation of risk versus reward. Through the link, she felt herself move with both their skills. She anticipated Rin's next attack, pivoted away from his blade, then swept his legs out from under him in a maneuver so unexpected even Rin's psychic shields faltered. He crashed to the floor, breath knocked from his lungs. Victory was hers. The crowd of Zephyrian warriors watching from behind the shield murmured their approval. But before Lyra could savor her triumph, a surge of raw emotion battered her senses, an unexpected wave of grief. Mason's memory, unbidden and unguarded, washed through the link. A night under alien stars, the smell of antiseptic and blood. The desperate hope of a young soldier whose life slipped away beneath Mason's hands. The sorrow was vast and honest, a grief undiluted by pride or anger. Lyra saw Mason's trembling fingers smoothing sweat from a dying brow, heard the words he whispered, promising peace to a soul departing far from home. The emotion pierced Lyra's armor more deeply than any blade. Her eyes shimmered, a trace of moisture reflecting the blue-white light of the hall. She staggered back, severing the link with a gasp. The psychic echo lingered, a tremor in her chest she could not will away. Rin rose, glaring at her in confusion and suspicion. Lyra didn't look at him. Instead, she turned to the sentinels above, voice sharp as a command. "Remove him!" The sentinels gripped Mason's arms, guiding him from the observation deck with mechanical precision. Mason's gaze lingered on Lyra. For an instant, she met his eyes, her expression conflicted, as if she couldn't decide whether to hate him or thank him for what he'd shown her. As he was led away, Mason's mind hummed with the aftershocks of their connection. He'd carried her pain, yes, but she'd touched something deeper in him, and he in her. For all her strength, Lyra had not expected to receive his soul in return. The lesson lingered in the charged silence, reverberating between them like the fading hum of energy blades in the night. In the silent fusion chamber, anticipation coiled like a living thing. Every surface was immaculate, the air thick with the metallic scent of ionized plasma and the tension of what was to come. Lyra stood at the heart of the chamber, shoulders squared beneath her ceremonial armor, the luminous sigils along her arms already pulsing in anticipation. Her jaw was set, her gaze unwavering. She had prepared for days, meditating until the world shrank to the single point of this ordeal, a test of her will, her control, her legacy. Mason entered at the silent beckoning of the council. His stride was steady, eyes clear, posture betraying nothing of the nervous flutter in his chest. This time he was not bound. There was no need. He stood opposite Lyra, the two of them alone in the ring of Zephyrian observers and the hushed shadow of the council. The sentinels watched from the periphery, but there was no sense of threat now, only gravity. The technician, hands trembling with the weight of ceremony, approached. "Commence fusion," he intoned. The crystal crown descended from the ceiling, its veins aglow with the blue-white fire of Zephyrian energy. As it hovered above them, Mason met Lyra's eyes. He gave a slight nod, a silent promise. "You're not alone." The filaments brushed their temples, the link ignited. Pain surged through Mason, more intense than before, raw, blinding, a current threatening to strip him of self. He gasped, his hands clenching at his sides. The agony poured into him with hurricane force, a tempest of fury, shame, and memory that threatened to tear him apart. In their shared mental space, Lyra cried out, the sound echoing between them, stripped of all pretense and armor. Her soul lay bare, every wound and triumph and scar revealed. The psychic onslaught battered Mason's defenses. For a moment, he faltered, his consciousness flickering at the edges. But his training as a healer rose to the surface, deeper than pain, older than fear. He was a medic. This was a wound, and wounds could be mended. He forced his mind to shift, not merely enduring the suffering, but working with it. In the psychic haze, he visualized her pain as a tangled snarl of burning energy, knots and thorns twisted around her spirit. He reached out with his will, gently, as if tending a broken bone, and began to build barriers, soft shields that dulled the sharpest agony. He sent waves of calm, let the warmth of compassion radiate through their bond. His memories, holding a trembling hand, whispering comfort in the darkness, became a balm, cooling the fire that consumed her. Gradually, the chaos shifted. The agony faded, replaced by something luminous and whole. Lyra felt her fury settle, not as a beast devouring her, but as a force she could command. For the first time she directed it, shaped it, wielded it. The sensation was dizzying. She was not alone. Mason was there, steady and sure, weaving order out of pain. The ordeal reached its climax. Lyra's body trembled, sweat beading along her brow, but her performance was flawless. Her control was absolute. Her power flowed, brilliant and unbroken. The Zephyrian Council watched in awe as she lowered her head, energy flaring in a perfect arc around her. The fusion ended. The crown retracted, its filaments dimming. Silence rang out, thunderous in its intensity. The council conferred in whispers, their faces showing something between shock and admiration. The balancer has surpassed expectation, one intoned, voice echoing through the chamber. A new standard is set. But Lyra knew the truth. Her strength was no longer hers alone. It was entwined with Mason's. After that day, Lyra found excuses to summon him. The pretext varied, sometimes a council debriefing, sometimes a demonstration for the elite. But more and more, she called for him in quieter moments. In her private chambers, where the walls shimmered with soft blue light and the air was scented with rare Zephyrian blossoms, she dismissed her staff, leaving only Mason. They would sit in silence, the world narrowed to the quiet thrum of the energy fields and the rhythmic sound of their breathing. At first, conversation was sparse. "Do you feel it too?" she asked one night, not looking at him. He nodded, voice low. "It lingers, like the echo of a storm." Silence, comfortable now. He watched as she unbraided her hair, metallic charms spilling like rain into her palm. On another evening, as she struggled with a surge of anger, her hands trembling, her voice raw, she said, "Guide me. Show me how you control it." He moved closer, sitting opposite her on the floor. "Visualize your energy," he instructed gently. "See where it knots, where it flows free." Lyra closed her eyes. Mason's presence filled her mind, steady and calming. He projected images, his own techniques for grounding emotion, the steady pulse of breath, the rhythm of a heartbeat. When frustration flared, he soothed her through the link, sending ripples of peace until her shoulders relaxed and her hands stilled. Her psychic patterns became visible, a network of luminous threads, some tangled and sparking, others smooth and bright. She learned to trace them, to unknot the places where rage pooled and pain collected. With Mason's guidance, she discovered new ways to channel her strength. The intimacy of the connection left her breathless. Night after night, their sessions deepened. Lyra began to notice details she'd once dismissed. The curve of Mason's smile when he was pleased with her progress. The gentleness in his hands as he guided her through a meditation. The quiet humor that surfaced in unexpected moments. One evening, as the lesson ended, Lyra found herself sitting beside him on the long velvet couch. The city lights beyond the window painted shifting patterns across his face. She reached out, her hand trembling just slightly, and traced the line of his cheek. The contact was electric, softer, more vulnerable than any battle they'd shared. Mason didn't retreat. He simply looked at her, eyes warm and open. "You're not alone, Lyra," he said softly. Their eyes met, and for a long moment neither moved. Longing flickered between them, an ache, sweet and sharp, born of all they had endured and healed together. Lyra, undefeated champion, felt a tremor of vulnerability that was both terrifying and exhilarating. In Mason's presence, she discovered a new kind of strength, one forged not by dominance or fury, but by trust, and the promise of something neither of them could name yet. Rin's doubts, once silent and festering, became certainty, hard and sharp as a blade. He watched Mason's growing influence, the secret glances exchanged with Lyra, the way she summoned the human with increasing frequency. Jealousy curdled into resolve. He would not allow an outsider to undermine Zephyrian tradition. He convened with the council, voice cool and respectful. "If the balancer is truly worthy, let him face the trial of wits. No human has survived it. Even our best have faltered under its pressures." The elders exchanged measured looks, but the decision was swift. Mason would be tested, not in combat, but in the crucible of Zephyrian strategy, where the mind itself was the battlefield. They brought Mason to the simulation chamber, a sphere of obsidian and humming crystal. He was strapped into the command chair, restraints biting into his wrists and ankles, neural filaments brushing his temples. Holographic glyphs spun above, representing the armies he would command in the ancient Zephyrian style. The chamber's psychic amplifiers thrummed, promising pain for every miscalculation. Rin stood at the control console, eyes narrowed with anticipation. "Begin," he commanded. The world around Mason fractured into the simulation. Alien landscapes, Zephyrian banners unfurling above his digital forces, enemy shapes moving in the mist. Data flooded his mind, pressure building behind his eyes. The rules were unfamiliar, the odds impossible. Every misstep triggered a pulse of agony, sharp, cold, precise. He steadied his breathing, recalling Lyra's lessons, and reached for calm. Suddenly, her mind brushed his, gentle, electric, unmistakable. "I am with you." A rush of strength flooded him. He felt her presence settle into his thoughts, her confidence lacing through his uncertainty. Mason surveyed the digital field. The first enemy assault came fast and loud, a feint meant to draw his attention. Instead of reacting with panic, he remembered an old Earth tactic, a sacrifice, not out of cruelty, but to buy time and reveal the enemy's plan. He dispatched a squad to the open valley, every instinct screaming against it. The enemy took the bait, overextending their position. Mason triggered an ambush, encircling them. The simulation hissed, registering his move. A lesser pain flared, a cost, but a calculated one. From the observation deck, Rin frowned, confusion flickering in his gaze. Lyra's presence pulsed warmly. "Your patience is unexpected." He grinned to himself, the thought sent along their link. Sometimes the best move is not to win, but to outlast. The scenario escalated. Enemy waves multiplied, new variables introduced with ruthless speed. Mason's mind should have buckled under the strain, but the link between him and Lyra grew seamless. Where he saw potential weaknesses, she executed counters with perfect Zephyrian precision. Her experience sharpened his strategy, his empathy softened her edges. Their memories began to bleed together in the heat of battle. Lyra felt the ache of Mason's old wounds, losses that had left him quieter, more careful. His courage forged in the small moments, a hand bandaged, a word of comfort, a single life saved. Mason, in turn, glimpsed Lyra's solitude, childhood nights spent beneath the cold gaze of the stars, the burden of leadership settling on her shoulders before she could understand its weight. Each time the simulation lashed out with psychic torment, trying to unseat him, Mason channeled the pain through the bond. Together they shaped it, deflected it, let it pass. The world shrank to the two of them, minds entwined, moving as one through shifting fields of chaos. Rin leaned forward, agitation growing. "He should be broken by now," he muttered. But Mason pressed on. In one sequence, he detected a flaw in the enemy's formation, a feint within a feint, the kind of double-blind maneuver even Zephyrian tacticians rarely noticed. He relayed the insight wordlessly. Lyra seized the opening, commanding a rapid assault. Their forces overwhelmed the enemy line in a cascade of perfect timing and trust. The simulation's final phase was a war of attrition. Mason's digital soldiers faltered, the psychic pain intensifying until the world swam red at the edges. Yet with Lyra anchoring him, whispering encouragement, he refused to yield. "Just a little farther," she urged. "I am here." With a last, desperate maneuver, a retreat that lured the enemy into a bottleneck, they unleashed a counterattack that shattered the opposition. The simulation flickered, then dissolved in a burst of light. Victory. The restraints released with a pneumatic hiss. Mason slumped, sweat beading his brow, chest heaving. He looked up to see Rin frozen in disbelief, mouth opening and closing around words that would not come. Lyra appeared at his side before he could speak, her eyes no longer cold, but luminous with pride and relief. Mason met her gaze, and in that moment, something shifted. She was not a warrior queen demanding loyalty. She was simply Lyra, vulnerable, grateful, and fiercely alive. The council convened, their verdict unanimous. The balancer has surpassed even Zephyrian expectation, the eldest declared. Mason barely heard them. He and Lyra lingered in the afterglow of the ordeal, their minds still twined. In that mental space, quiet, luminous, timeless, memories lingered. Lyra's childhood loneliness, the echo of her footsteps in endless palace halls, the weight of duty pressing her spine straight even as a girl. Mason's quiet courage, long nights stitching wounds by lantern light, hope flickering even in retreat. There was comfort now, a profound trust. They were understood, truly, deeply, without defense. Lyra reached for his hand, their fingers brushing in the space between worlds. "You see me," she whispered, mind and voice entwined. "And you see me," he answered, his heart aching with something new and wild. The intimacy was undeniable. This was no longer mere survival. It was belonging. Suddenly, alarms blared. A shriek of klaxons slicing through the chamber. The simulation room's walls pulsed crimson, Zephyrian sentinels springing to alert. Outside, the city's power grid flickered. Explosions echoed in the distance. A sentinel's voice crackled through the intercom. "The Dravari have breached the perimeter. They strike at the core." Rin's expression twisted from defeat to panic. "Protect the princess!" "To the command bunker, now!" Lyra straightened, the vulnerability in her eyes replaced by determination. "Mason, with me!" They ran, side by side, as the palace trembled under enemy assault. Their bond remained strong, a silent promise echoing between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. On the command bridge, tension snapped like static across every surface. Alarms pulsed in crimson bands along the obsidian walls, reflecting in Lyra's silver-blue eyes as she surveyed the chaos beyond the viewport. Zephyrian officers scrambled between stations, relaying orders, their voices taut with urgency. Outside, the Star Shadow's shields shimmered beneath a barrage of Dravari torpedoes, each impact rattling the deck underfoot. Lyra stood at the center of it all, regal, unyielding, yet haunted by the knowledge that survival demanded more than steel and strategy. She needed every ounce of power she possessed, and more. She turned, voice ringing clear through the din. "Bring him!" Within moments, Mason was escorted onto the bridge. He barely had time to scan the tactical displays before technicians guided him toward the advanced fusion chair, sleek, coiled with crystalline filaments, and lined with energy dampeners. This was no ceremonial seat, but a machine built for war, its purpose singular: to channel and magnify Lyra's psychic might, using Mason as both anchor and conduit. Rin stepped forward, alarm etched into every line of his face. "This will kill you both," he warned, voice breaking with conviction. "The last fusion nearly destroyed her mind. This is madness." Lyra met his gaze, her resolve a living force. "Then so be it." No one else dared protest. The technician secured Mason in the chair, filaments whispering against his skin. He felt Lyra's presence even before the link snapped into place, a surge of heat and anticipation, a pulse shared between two hearts braced for oblivion. The star shadow launched into the teeth of battle. Outside the viewport, the Zephyrian fleet closed ranks, weaving through the chaotic lattice of enemy fire. The Dravari ships glimmered, sleek and predatory, their formation tightening around their flagship, a monstrous vessel bristling with plasma cannons and psychic disruptors. The link ignited. Agony crashed into Mason, a torrent of pain, rage, and raw psychic force. He clamped down on instinct, letting the pain flow through him, refusing to let it dictate the terms. He could feel Lyra's fury, her fear, her brilliant, burning need to protect her people. It would have devoured him once. But now, Mason was no longer just her shield. He was her equal, her calm center. He saw through her eyes, the sweep of the battlefield, the shudder of the deck beneath her boots, the pulse of every Zephyrian soul in the ship. He felt the tension in the hull, the desperate hope in the crew. He reached for Lyra's mind, shaping her pain into clarity. His presence became a lighthouse within the storm, a place where chaos sharpened into strategy. Lyra's voice echoed through their bond, taut and breathless. "I can't hold the shield and strike." "You're not alone," Mason replied, his thought as steady as a stone. "Focus on their formation. I'll guide you through the rest." An enemy wing swooped in, port side, cannons blazing. Mason felt the threat an instant before the sensors registered it. "Port side, Vector 33, he signaled, the words forming in her mind and on his lips at once. Lyra responded without hesitation. Her hands danced over the controls, channeling her fury into the Star Shadow's weapons array. The cannons fired, a rippling barrage of energy that sliced through the Dravari fighters. The ship twisted, shields flaring, moving with a precision that was no longer just Lyra's or Mason's, but both. The Dravari pressed harder, their flagship looming, energy coiling around its core. Mason sensed the trap, an overcharge, meant to lure the Star Shadow into range. "They're baiting us," he warned. "Wait until the charge spikes, then strike for the core." Lyra's mind raced. She trusted him now, utterly. "Hold fire," she ordered her crew, ignoring their anxious protests. Seconds stretched. The enemy flagship's core pulsed brighter, a star on the verge of collapse. Mason watched the telemetry, timing the rhythm, feeling the echo of the enemy commander's intent through the psychic haze. "Now." "Fire," he breathed, and Lyra squeezed the trigger. A spear of energy leapt from the Star Shadow's cannons, straight into the exposed heart of the Dravari flagship. The blast tore through its shields, rupturing the reactor. For a moment, the entire enemy fleet wavered, their formation fracturing. Zephyrian ships surged forward, pressing the advantage. One by one, the Dravari vessels fell back, engines flickering, discipline broken. The bridge erupted in cheers. Lyra slumped in her command seat, her breathing ragged, sweat glimmering on her brow. Mason, still in the fusion chair, felt the aftershocks, pain and triumph colliding, their hearts beating in time. Rin approached, face solemn. For the first time there was no resentment in his gaze, only respect. He inclined his head. "You did what no Zephyrian could. You brought her back." Mason smiled, exhaustion softening his features. "She brought herself back. I just steadied the path." As the bridge quieted, the connection between Lyra and Mason lingered, no longer a tool of war, but a lifeline. In the hush after battle, their link pulsed with tenderness. Lyra's storm was soothed by Mason's presence, and his strength was kindled by her fire. The old boundaries had fallen away. There was no longer balancer and champion, only partners, equals forged by battle and bound by something deeper than fate. Lyra turned to him, eyes shining with gratitude and a fierce, unguarded warmth. Their minds touched, sharing memories and dreams in the gentle tide of aftermath. For a heartbeat, the war was far away. There was only the rhythm of their joined hearts, the certainty that together there was nothing they could not face. In the Zephyrian Council Hall, tension crackled like ozone. Marble columns gleamed in the cool light, their surfaces reflecting the assembled counselors, each robed in deep blue, silver, or indigo, each face carved from suspicion or hope. The vast chamber was alive with debate, voices overlapping, cutting through the air in quick, sharp Zephyrian. "He is an asset, nothing more," one counselor insisted, striking a crystalline datapad for emphasis. "He is a contaminant, a wild variable we barely understand," another countered, eyes locked on Mason with open wariness. Rin's voice rose above the tumult, clear and commanding. "We cannot allow a human, even one with his record, to remain in the heart of Zephyrian command. He has served his purpose. Now, he must be removed." Mason stood at the center of the storm, shoulders squared, chin lifted despite the fatigue that lingered in his bones. He wore no armor, no sigil of rank. There was nothing left to hide behind. He heard the counselors argue his fate as if he were a malfunctioning weapon, not a man. He was resigned, silent, letting the words wash over him, focusing on the anchor that had steadied him through every battle. Lyra. The great doors at the end of the hall parted with a sonorous rumble. A hush swept the room. Lyra entered, each step echoing on the polished floor. She wore ceremonial black armor, the plates edged in silver, her markings subdued, a memory of fury rather than a threat. Her hair, unadorned, fell in loose waves across her shoulders. There was a new calm to her gaze, a gravity that drew every eye. She strode into the council's circle and raised a hand. The chamber fell silent, counselors deferring to their princess with a mixture of respect and uncertainty. She looked first to the council, then to Mason. "Enough," she said, her voice resonant, every syllable deliberate. "He is not a tool. He is not a contaminant." She paused, letting her words settle like stones in water. "He is the other half of the weapon that saved us." Counselors exchanged glances. Rin bristled, but said nothing. Lyra stepped closer to Mason. Her armor whispered against his shirt as she pressed her palm to his chest, fingers splayed. Public, intimate, unflinching. Her voice softened, but carried through the hall. "He is mine." A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. Shock, disbelief, and something like awe flickered in the eyes of the council. Mason's heart hammered beneath her hand, the gesture both claim and confession. Lyra turned to the council, chin high. "I declare Mason my bonded consort. He is to be freed, not as a tool, not as a servant, but as my chosen." The words rang with finality. For a moment, even the air seemed to hold its breath. Rin stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "You risk much, Princess. The council—" She silenced him with a glance. "The council owes its survival to this bond. I will not let fear dictate our future." Her hand lingered on Mason's chest, her gaze softening. The room seemed to shrink until there was only the two of them, standing at the center of Zephyrian history. The bond between them was no longer necessity. It was choice, public, intimate, binding. Mason covered her hand with his own, steady and sure. "I am yours," he said, the words simple, but carrying a lifetime of meaning. The counselors watched, stunned, as Lyra, unconquered, unbroken, claimed her equal before them all. Later, when the hall had emptied, victory parades faded to memory, and the war was truly over, Mason found himself in Lyra's private chambers. The walls glowed with soft blue light, Zephyrian blossoms perfuming the air. Outside, the city pulsed with new hope. The fusion device, once an instrument of necessity and pain, now rested inert, a relic, a reminder of what they had overcome. Mason stood beside her at the window, gaze lost in the city's lights. Lyra joined him, her armor gone, replaced by a simple tunic, her hair loose and shining. They spoke quietly, the weight of war replaced by the uncertainty of peace. "Your council still doesn't trust me," Mason said, watching his reflection in the glass. "They see an anomaly, not a partner." "They are Zephyrian," Lyra replied, a rueful smile touching her lips. "It takes them centuries to change. You could return to your world if you wish. You are free." He turned to her, fingers tracing the faded markings along her jaw, those once bright with fury, now calm and beautiful. "My world has healers. It doesn't have you." He smiled, gentle and true. "What we share, there's no word for." She smiled, a rare, radiant thing, brighter than the Zephyrian dawn. "We have a word, Veyara, souls joined in the same fire, becoming one." Lyra covered his hand with hers, the gesture light but unbreakable. The air between them was alive with longing, with the promise of something lasting beyond battle and duty. "I no longer need you to bear my pain," she whispered, voice trembling with truth. "But I still need our connection. I choose it, Mason. I choose you." He leaned in, resting his forehead to hers. The contact was gentle, reverent. "So do I." They settled side by side, no restraints, no machines, only choice. Their minds brushed, not out of necessity or survival, but with the warmth of love and belonging. Lyra's soul was no longer a storm, but a haven. Their bond was calm and fire, perfectly and beautifully united. The war was over. This was their peace. This brings our story to a close. Don't forget to hit subscribe, give the video a like, and share in the comments which part you enjoyed the most. Our team will truly appreciate your support. There are plenty more exciting stories waiting for you on our channel. See you in the next video.